Hi, grade 7. This is a math lesson for 224. Page 224 is a mid-chapter practice test. Let's get into problem number 1 where it says show two different ways to write 5/6 as a percent. I'm not going to do that one, but I'm going to do one similar to it. What if they had the same exact directions for 1/6? For 1/6. Well, I need to come up with two percent values, right? The first thing I would do in a problem like this is I would change 1/6 into a decimal number. 1 divided by 6 on a calculator comes out to 1.666666666 to repeating, right? And so we would tend to change that to this, wouldn't we? Now, how can I make that into two different percent values? Here's how we do it. One way is to realize that when I'm changing a decimal number into a percent, it's really just moving the decimal point two places to the right. Do you remember that? Changing from a decimal to a percent, really just moving the decimal point two places to the right. So my first answer in this case would be 16.6 repeating percent, because all I would do is move the decimal point two places to the right. Second thing I realize, let's look right here. I happen to know, based on that purple table from yesterday's assignment, that 0.6 repeating is the same thing as 2/3. So why can't I write this as 16 2/3% as well? And you know what? That's correct. So here are my two percent values for 1/6. And it's all based on first changing it into a decimal, and then using that decimal to make the percent values. Number 2, explain how to find 75% of 8 mentally. Mentally. Well, I'm not going to do it for 75% of 8. I am going to do it for 75% of 20. How would I explain that mentally? Well, I would first, and I would be writing this down, I would first write this as 3/4 according to that purple table, and then I would take 3/4 times 20, and in my mind 3/4 times 20 is the number 15. That would be my explanation. Notice it's in a paragraph form. Now, you've got to do the same thing for 75% of 8, but it's the same basic process. How about 3 through 6? How are you going to handle that? 3 through 6. Well, number 3 says 3 out of 20. I'm not going to show you that one, but I'm going to write 5 out of 20. How would I do that? 5 out of 20, and I want to change that into a percent. Well, first I'd write it as a fraction. Then I'd change it into a fraction that has 100 as its denominator. And finally, that would lead me to a percent, because hundredths is a percent value. Okay? That's something similar to 3. How about number 4? Well, I'm not going to do number 4, but what if it said 12.2 out of 100? I would write that as 12.2 over 100, which tells me that it's 12.2%, because percent means hundredths, doesn't it? How about if I had something like number 5, which says 13/25, but I'm going to write it as 7/25. First, change it to hundredths. Then, hundredths means percent, so I write 28 hundredths as 28%. How about number 6? They have 7/20ths for number 6. I'm not going to do that one. How about instead of 7/20ths, I do one for 9/20ths. 9/20ths. Well, just change it to hundredths. Multiplying by 5 down here, so I do the same thing at the top, and that means a percent value of 45%. Percent means hundredths. How about 7 through 10? 7 through 10, we're changing either decimals or fractions into percents. No big deal. Let's start with something similar to number 7, 0.125. If I want to change a decimal into a percent, all I'm going to do is move the decimal point over 2 places, 12.5%. Simple as that. Okay? What if I want to change a fraction into a percent? Well, we already talked about that in 3 through 6, but let's do one. How about 7/50ths? That's kind of like number 8. I'm just changing it into hundredths, and when I do that, that's my percent value. 14 hundredths times 2 times 2, 14%. How about something like number 10? What if I had 1.24 and I wanted to change that into a percent? I'm just going to move the decimal point over 2 places. It's 124%. But why does that work? Why does moving the decimal point over 2 places work? Let me show you. This is really 1.24 over, I'm sorry, I just said that wrong. It's really 1 and 24 hundredths, right? Because we're occupying the tenths and the hundredths place value. And if I change that into a fraction, that's 124 hundredths. And 124 hundredths is 124%. Okay. What about 11 through 13? 11 through 13. Do you remember how to solve those word problems and turn them into percent proportion problems? Let's try something like number 11. 63 is what percent of 84%? I'm going to try 80 is what percent of 200? Remember, form a proportion. I don't know the percent value, so I'm going to go x over 100. The number that follows the word of is the base, so I put the 200 here, and the 80 has to go in the last remaining slot. We then just solve for x, and in this case, x would end up being 40. But it's not just 40, it's 40%, because it's over the top of 100, right? So the answer is 40% in that case. How about something like number 12? What if it said find 40% of 120? How would I do that? Find 40% of 120. Well, again, proportion problem. 40 over 100. What follows the word of is the 120, so I put that on the bottom. 40%, I'm looking for x, right? Looking for x. So what does x equal in this case? If I solve this, I'm going to find that x equals 48. Notice it's 48. It's not 48% because we've already got the percent value in the problem itself. How about 14 through 17? That's yesterday's assignment, isn't it? Where we're computing things mentally, theoretically, but you can also do it on paper. How about number 14? How would I do 25% of 64? Well, I'm not going to do it for 64. I'm going to do it for 80. 25% of 80. How would I do that? Well, I'd change 25% to 1/4. 1/4 times 80 over 1 gives me 80 over 4, or 20. And I chopped that off, didn't I? Okay. What about, how about number 18? Santos scored an 87% on his English exam. What would that be as a decimal value? I'm going to have to do 87%. I'm going to do, how about 83%? What's the decimal value of that? Isn't 83% the same thing as 83 hundredths? And isn't 83 hundredths the same thing as 83 hundredths? And isn't that a decimal number? Because I'm filling the hundredths place value. 83 hundredths, 0 and 83 hundredths. So there's our decimal value for 83%. It's really just moving the decimal point 2 places to the left this time. I think we'll stop there. Thank you, 7th grade.